Wednesday already. I can't believe how fast this week is flying by, Dave. It's just very quick. Pat Oedy-Murray is with us, and, Dave Basheris and yours truly, Ron Finn. And Pat, you have a wonderful chat all scheduled for today, don't you?
Yeah, I always enjoy these chats, but I'm looking forward to this one in particular because the phones are a difficult thing. So I can't wait to hear your guests' thoughts on this.
Yes, today we have with us Clement Harrold. He is a freelance writer living in southwest England, and he wrote an article, How I Kicked My Phone Habit, which appeared in First Things. So welcome, Clement. How are you today?
I'm doing very well, Pat. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate the opportunity.
Oh, well, I love this article. So tell us, what made you kind of realize that you may have had a problem with your phone?
Yes, well, that is a good question. And for me, this article that I wrote had really been kind of brewing in my mind for about 18 months. And I think I explained at the beginning of the article, I think what was the kind of turning point for me in realizing I have a problem and I need to fix this was realizing that there was barely a moment in my day where my phone was not within arm's reach. And so every part of my day, whether it was going to mass, whether it was when I slept, whether it was at meals or going to the gym, every single part of my day, I had this little device within arm's reach. And eventually it just kind of hit me, that's not the way I want to live my life. That it's very easy to do that. No one's going to judge me for that, but that's not the way that I want to live my life, where the phone had become this kind of idol that I couldn't be separated from.
And you make mention of Stephen Covey's concept of sometimes we get into this idea of things that are urgent, but they're not important. Can you explain that to the audience and how that related to your phone?
Yeah, absolutely. That's from Stephen Covey's book, 7 Habits for Highly Effective People. And yeah, he talks there about that we have these kind of different tasks. He splits them into 4 quadrants. We might have tasks that are urgent and they're important. And okay, I've got to tend to those. But then he says that there might also be tasks which are urgent, but they're unimportant. And what I discuss in the article is that I realized that my phone was constantly presenting me with these tasks that seemed to be urgent, but were ultimately unimportant. Whether it was a notification that I just had to check, or a message that I had to reply to, or a new YouTube video that I just had to stay up to date on. Constantly I was being bombarded with what I refer to as the tyranny of this quadrant 3, these urgent but unimportant activities. And I think that I'm probably not the only one who's had that experience of just feeling constantly torn in different directions by that kind of pinging sound on the phone, that sense of urgency. And I think ultimately what that does is it makes us kind of exhausted, kind of anxious. And so I kind of decided, you know what, I want to kind of have more freedom in the way that I relate to this device that I have.
And you talked about your phone at times being a source of vice for you. How can you explain that to the audience?
Absolutely. And there's a clarification there, I think, right, that the phone itself doesn't cause the vice. That's me with my broken, sinful heart. I'm the one that chooses vice. Right. But the reality is that technology is really powerful. Technology is not neutral, and different technologies can give us greater occasion for sin or greater occasion for virtue. And what I kind of noticed is that in different parts of my life, my smartphone and the way that I had an unhealthy relationship with it was making it much easier for me to slip into vices. So whether that was vices of lust on things like social media, or vices of vanity on social media, or whether that was the vice of achadia or laziness or sloth, just in the way that my phone was taking up so much of my time and distracting me from the things I should be doing. So that for me was my experience, is that the phone was not making it easier for me to be a saint. And so what I wanted to do was to kind of reassert myself and say, no, like the phone is to serve me, not the other way around. And then I need to have really strict boundaries in place to make sure that I can still pursue virtue, pursue sanctity in this kind of modern world that we find ourselves in.
So, Clement, what helped you to set those boundaries? Like, what kind of boundaries did you set that you believe that this has been very helpful to you?
That's a great question. I would say, in my experience, setting good boundaries when it comes to our vices has to begin from a place of humility. And again, I'm speaking about myself here, but that I know that in my life, if I tell myself that I'm going to overcome something just through sheer willpower, I very rarely succeed. If I say I'm gonna get up at 6 a.m. every day this week, or I'm gonna, do cold showers, or whatever it is, it's like if it's just my willpower and I'm only holding myself accountable, I rarely succeed. And so having the humility to recognize that, and then I think setting the boundaries, what it becomes is a process of finding systems and measures of accountability that help me kind of keep on track. So with my phone, it was installing certain softwares. There's a software called Freedom that I use. Or when it comes to struggles with lust, it might be something like Covenant Eyes. And then also accountability with friends, that's something that I do on a regular basis, calling and texting friends. These are my goals at the moment. Can you keep me accountable? The amount of time I'm spending on my screen or whatever it might be. So that for me is how it kind of unfolded, is that it was really important to recognize my own weak will and then to try and find those things that I would find most helpful.
One of the things you mentioned is a book by Neil Postman on it's called Technopoly, and you mentioned a little bit about that his idea was that he worried that the computer would give rise to egocentrism. I tend to believe it does. What do you think there?
That's right. Yeah, Postman's book Technopoly is an amazing prophetic work. He wrote it in, I think it's 1992, so we're talking over 30 years ago now. And boy, did he see everything coming. That quote that you give there, that he said, is it possible that the computer is going to turn egotism into a virtue? And I think now when you see that we have not just computers in our pretty much every room in the house, but we also have them in our pockets. Our smartphone is a computer, and increasingly we have them on our wrists as well, our smartwatches. What has that done? Well, for Postman, again, it goes back to the point I made earlier. No technology is neutral. Technologies affect the way that we think. They affect our language, our symbols, the way that we interact with one another. And what he really saw is that the computer does that. The computer is such a powerful technology. It's actually going to transform the way that society operates, the way that we think about ourselves. He made that really bold prediction, which sadly I think has proven to be true, is that we now live in a society that is incredibly egocentric. And I think things like social media fuel this, where everyone kind of thinks, I'm the center of the universe, I don't owe anything to anybody, and everyone should kind of look at me. It's very much, you think of the iPhone, this is the I generation. Whereas what we ought to be as Christians is we ought to be looking at Christ. We ought to be the generation that's about Him.
That's excellent. Yeah, and when you think about that, the iPhone, right? That really does say a lot, doesn't it, about what the point of all this is sometimes. Well, Clement, thank you so much for being with us today. You were amazing. Thanks for writing this article. Our guest today was Clement Harrold. He's a freelance writer. He wrote an article in First Things that I would encourage you to read, How I Kicked My Phone Habit. Thanks, Clement.
Thank you, Pat. God bless you.
God bless. So, what do you think, guys?
I like to chat with Pat. Now, here's the thing. I struggle with the phone. With work, with personal things, you always feel like there's this anxiety if it's not close enough to you. And it's kind of hard to build those schedules in to relieve yourself of it, but I've been trying to do that a lot lately, and I hope to make
Read the article,
progress.
Dave.
Yeah,
Read the article.